Discovery Audio.
Hello, everyone. I'm an indigenous elder of the Eastern Cherokee and Muskogee tribes, and you're listening to
the Awakened Underground podcast. This podcast represents the opinions and experience of its hosts and guests for educational and informational purposes only.
Psychedelic plant medicines are sacred technologies that have been stewarded by indigenous people around the world since before recorded history.
As these indigenous wisdoms enter the mainstream culture, we ask you to please operate from a place of respect
and reciprocity as to end the exploitation and colonization of First Nations people.
It's imperative to use immense caution when embarking on your journey to work with psychedelic medicines,
as they are powerful tools for human transformation that are not to be taken lightly.
Information shared within this podcast should not be taken as medical advice.
Awakened Underground, its guests and partners are not liable for any actions of your choosing.
With that said,
we trust you will make responsible and ethical choices under your own free will.
I've put this off for far too long, for fear of being persecuted. But I can no longer sit idly by in good conscience as millions of people suffer, knowing firsthand there is a cure. A cure that has the power to not only heal, but to teach us how to coexist in greater harmony with each other, the earth, and all sentient life. Medicines that have the capacity to provide answers to humanity's greatest questions, the questions that have been the genesis of countless wars, deaths, pain, and prejudice. Who are we? Why are we here? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Are we alone? My name is Cody Blue, and I'm a product of the medication generation.
This is your brain on drugs.
This is your brain on drugs.
America's public enemy number one.
To a new and dangerous area, the use of hallucinogens.
Bad trip, a bummer, a freak out, even a flip out.
Don't let drugs ruin your future.
Both call it not a war on drugs, but a war on
consciousness.
You are now entering the Awakened Underground podcast.
As a kid growing up in Long Island, New York, I struggled to focus in math class, so the teachers called my parents and recommended I consult with a physician. Without so much as a question into my lifestyle, my pediatrician diagnosed me with ADHD and prescribed me pharmaceutical medication. The side effects were so bad that the doctors had to change my medication every couple of months and search for the most effective brand, dose, and combination of pills. One made me overeat, another made me not eat at all. One made me narcoleptic, another an insomniac. Some angry, others depressed, almost all of them anxious. After years of this, we eventually landed on the name brand that allowed me to feel the most normal. Adderall. But by that point, I had long forgotten what normal felt like. The only thing I knew was what I was told by the adults. Something was wrong with me. I had a neurochemical imbalance in my brain, and I needed the medication to function as a normal kid in society. I was lucky to have access to such medications, and I should be grateful. I was. I went on to find my calling outside of the math room, and instead in the art room, as a director and a screenwriter. By my early 20s, I was directing music videos and commercials professionally, and my independent short films had garnered nearly 100 official selection laurels and won 40 international awards. At 23, me and my brother Shane's short film Fool's Day premiered at Tribeca to much fanfare and launched our careers in Hollywood. New Line Cinema bought the feature adaptation of the short film and signed me to a 3-picture deal as a director. We moved to Los Angeles, where I was signed to a big agency and inducted into the Directors Guild and Writers Guild of America. All my dreams were coming true, but somehow I felt despondent and detached from the world. After being drugged for over a decade, the positive side effects were waning and the negative side effects intensified by the day, until I fell into a deep depression and was experiencing daily panic attacks. In what felt like the lowest point in my life, I consulted with a psychiatrist in LA about my condition and expressed interest in getting off the medication, as I believed the drugs to be the culprit. But the doctor's response was to simply crack a joke and write me a prescription doubling my Adderall dosage and adding an antidepressant to balance me out. Sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, for the first time ever, I decided to take matters into my own hands and do deep research into the drugs I was on. And I was horrified by what I discovered. I learned that Adderall is almost chemically identical to meth and both highly addictive and toxic. Even more surprising to me was to find a long list of side effects that included depression, panic attacks, psychosis, paranoia, restlessness, aggression, increased blood pressure, as well as physical damage to the brain, organs, and internal systems. Horrified that not a single one of my doctors have ever warned me about this, even after my complaints, I decided to investigate into the pharmaceutical companies making these drugs, and I couldn't believe where following Big Pharma's money led me. Apparently, the pharmaceutical industry employs something on the order of 1,100 highly trained federal lobbyists in Washington, which is more than 2 for each member of Congress. In the last decade alone, the drug lobby had spent almost $2.5 billion influencing elections and legislation on both sides of the aisle. This has led to the total number of prescriptions filled by Americans to increase by 85% in the past 20 years, with a spending increase of over $200 billion. According to the Mayo Clinic, almost 70% of Americans take at least one prescription medication, while more than 50% are on multiple, and 20% of patients are on 5 or more medications. This has contributed to a 4-fold rise in deaths due to drug overdose in the past 20 years, with prescription drugs being responsible for more deaths and more hospitalizations than all illicit substances combined. Furthermore, I discovered that the pills I was taking all these years were not entirely being broken down by my system, and when I was going to the bathroom, these pharmaceutical drugs would be transported into the local water filtration systems that lacked the proper technology to filter out all the chemicals from the water, which were then being pumped back into the oceans. This buildup of chemicals in our oceans were being consumed by our aquatic life and severely altering the behavior of wildlife. For example, the birth control was affecting the reproduction of fish, and antidepressants were creating something called happy fish, where they would not have a normal fight or flight response and more easily get eaten, threatening the biodiversity and ecosystem of our oceans and our planet. When I discovered this, I was livid. How could it be that 1 in 6 Americans take prescription drugs for psychiatric health, yet somehow we are in the most significant mental health crisis the world has ever seen? Suicide is a top 10 leading cause of death and has steadily increased by 35% over the last 20 years. More than 30% of Americans report symptoms of anxiety and depression, with countless others going unreported as the negative stigma surrounding mood disorders still permeates the culture. That day, I decided to kick the drugs and go on a journey to find true medicine outside of the Western pharmaceutical model. I still didn't feel right and weathered a debilitating withdrawal period that lasted for months. It seemed as if my brain chemistry had been damaged or simply developed around having the drugs in my system, and without the meds, I struggled with symptoms of depression, anxiety, and a heightened ADHD that resembled a form of intense brain fog that made it difficult to do virtually anything. I traveled all over the world working with different doctors, dietitians, naturopaths, healers, and psychiatrists. I quickly learned that psychiatry is one of the rare fields of medicine that doesn't examine the organ it is treating and use imaging technology to make diagnoses. This fascinating discovery led me to meet with numerous neuroscientists and receive QEEG scans of my brain. These scans revealed 3 traumas from concussions received playing sports early in my adolescence, specifically football, jiu-jitsu, and a bad snowboarding accident. Convinced that this may be the root of all my problems I was experiencing throughout my life, I read countless books on neurology and experimented with every modality I could find that was said to help heal the brain. Nutrition, meditation, exercise, neurofeedback, breathwork, cold therapy, you name it, I tried it. One day, while at the neuroimaging lab, I discovered that one of the clinicians was researching the mental health applications of psychedelics and ancient shamanic plants at UCLA and having great success with mood disorders. This is where I first learned about psychedelic plant medicines and the potential healing capabilities of what I call the Big 5 entheogens: ayahuasca, wachuma, iboga, psilocybin mushroom, and vilca, a dimethyltryptamine compound. I was highly skeptical of these modalities at first, as I was raised by two straight-edge parents who come from a world where drug abuse, addiction, and overdose are rampant. But when I researched these plants, I was fascinated to discover a deep history of scientific literature and research validating the healing benefits of these compounds, as well as scores of artists, psychologists, musicians, philosophers, authors, inventors, doctors, gurus, and geniuses risking their careers to publicly support the tremendous power of these modalities. Still, I was hesitant. I was confused why these so-called medicines were not being exploited by Big Pharma for profit if they were so highly effective. Well, I got my answer when I found out that all of these substances are in the public domain, prohibiting pharmaceutical companies from owning their patent and profiteering off of them the way they do with their $1,170 billion synthetic-based drug model. With my curiosity piqued and having exhausted all their options, I decided to give entheogenic plant medicines a try. I began by experimenting with the gentlest and most commonly known plant medicine, psilocybin. I traveled to a native reservation with two of my hometown friends, Mike and Zach, where I did my first formal mushroom ceremony with a shaman. The experience itself was one of the most profound things I have ever been a part of, and it changed my life forever. My mood significantly shifted afterward, and it had even healed my stress fracture on my spine. I literally walked into that ceremony wearing a back brace, and to this day I've never worn it again. Even more miraculous than the healing was the nature of the experience. I walked into that ceremony a scientific agnostic, and an hour later had my Western concept of reality completely shattered before my eyes, as I experienced what many people call a shamanic awakening. Now, convinced that these plant medicines may be the cure I've been seeking for years, I decided to travel to the Amazon rainforest with my brother Shane and childhood friend Greg to work with shamans of the Shipibo tribe and some of the strongest psychedelic medicines known to humankind, specifically ayahuasca, wachuma, and vilca, as well as bobensan and mapacho. These 2 weeks of ceremonies were the most grueling and intense experiences of my entire life. They opened me to the vast multidimensional nature of consciousness. This was the most profound learning experience I have ever received, and as a lifelong seeker of truth, this was the most powerful, direct spiritual experience I had ever achieved. An experience more real than everyday reality. An experience so profound and intense, it literally shook me to my core and brought me to my knees. Night after night, through blood, sweat, tears, and intense purging, it obliterated any remaining false or limiting beliefs that I was holding on to. When I returned to America, I was a changed man. I had a neuroscientist scan my brain again, and the brain damage from my 3 childhood concussions completely disappeared. On top of that, my brainwaves had completely rewired themselves to a more balanced state. As a result, I felt a deep peace and no longer suffered from ADHD, depression, or anxiety. And all these years later, I still don't. These ancient medicines didn't suppress my symptoms like the pharmaceutical drugs, but instead cut to the core of the symptoms and healed me on a level of my consciousness. When my family witnessed the physical evidence of my healing, my straight-edge mother and remaining siblings traveled to Peru and did ceremonies of their own. Collectively, my family healed PTSD, insomnia, addiction, depression, suicidal ideation, borderline personality disorder, parasites, chronic pain, and muscle contusion. Even more unbelievable were the healings we witnessed. My mother watched an elderly woman treat and heal her stomach cancer. Me and my brother saw a 53-year-old Canadian therapist cure his diabetes. And we all watched as a colorblind woman who in ceremony forgave the man that killed her son saw color for the first time. Ever since my healing, I have become a humble student and practitioner of plant medicine shamanism. To this day, when I am not focused on my career as a filmmaker, I sit in circles around the world with my friends, my fiancé, and family as we continue to heal, learn, and grow. For years, we have done this work in secret for fear of cultural, social, and legal ramifications. But with recent scientific breakthroughs around the healing power of psychedelics and strong efforts to decriminalize and legalize these medicines in the States, I am being called to come out from the underground and create a safe space for others to share their story of healing and awakening. This awakening is the evolution of humankind. It is a revolution of consciousness, and this show is a call to arms for all who are ready to step out of their current matrix of belief and awaken to their true power and purpose in this life, and become the harbingers of a new, more peaceful, healed, and loving world. It is our intention to help those who are sick to find healing, to help those who seek to find truth, and to help those who are lost to find their way home. I know this all may sound a little insane, but never forget, to a sick society, truth will always sound like insanity. Now, it is time to wake up.
David Nutt is a professor of neuropsychopharmacology, and in 2009, he was actually fired as the UK government's chief drugs advisor for publicly stating that LSD and ecstasy are less dangerous than alcohol.
So you had this full-scale moral panic that eventually doomed the research.
Psychedelics changed my life.
Psychedelics can be used to treat mental illness.
Addiction, depression, obsession. The feeling among the scientists is that these chemicals allow us to essentially reboot the brain.
Research into psychedelic therapies may just save the world from the mental health crisis we're in today.
The Awakened Underground Podcast.
For our first episode, I want to start by having my parents on to talk about plant medicines, as well as my baby sister, who was also placed on pharmaceutical medication as a child for borderline personality disorder. I'm choosing to start this show with members of my biological family because it is my hope that the vulnerability of hearing a family talk about a subject matter that is still so misunderstood and taboo will open up the door for others to have these conversations with their family members. I know that sitting in medicine circles around the world with my family always brings a lightness and comfortability to the circle. First-timers always come up to us before a ceremony and say that they were feeling tremendous fear around drinking the medicine, and seeing an entire family enter the circle tremendously helped put their anxieties at ease. I wish the same for you. I'm also starting with my family because so much of my journey has been around putting my family first above all else in my life. I've been shown in ceremony that trauma is passed down generationally, and once we heal ourselves, shifting our focus to helping our family members heal is a gateway to a better world and a means to helping heal the greater collective. Now, my mother Suzette and sister Shai have worked with psychedelic plant medicines for many years. They've stepped into the fire time and time again and emerged healthier, happier, and more whole as a result. My father, on the other hand, is a different story. He's a beacon of health and stability in the proverbial shoulders in which I stand upon. He is famously straight edge, testifying under oath in Congress during the PMRC hearings where he fought against censorship in the 80s, that he does not drink, smoke, or do drugs. That is all true, and the same principles I was raised on. But as my father has watched my family experience miraculous healing from psychedelic plant medicines, he has changed his position to that of a plant medicine advocate. Although he is still unwilling to experiment with these medicines as he has little need or interest. But as my dad gets older in age, he is beginning to experience certain age-related conditions that were not present in the past. My hope is that bringing my father on the first episode to have an open dialogue about plant medicines might shift his position on things and open him to these alternative medical treatments. This is the Awakened Underground podcast, and I'm here with my family, Dee Snider, Suzette Snider, and Shai Snider. First, before we do any of this, I just want to say thank you guys so much for doing this. I know it's an incredibly vulnerable conversation, and I'm asking you guys to talk about, your personal mental health, family health journey.
Why wasn't I told?
And to be vulnerable. So I just want to say thank you. I love you guys so much.
Love you. Pretty
infantilizing to, have your parents and your family come on a first date, let alone the first episode of a podcast. But I my intention in doing this is to remove the stigma around psychedelic plant medicines and to show how this can heal a family. I had a basketball coach that used to say, don't do anything you won't tell your mother about. And, we've always been incredibly transparent in the fact that you guys all have like joined us and supported this journey.
A little too transparent.
But I would just love to kind of like start from the beginning, being that Shy, Mom, you both have worked with psychedelic plant medicines and benefited from it. Dad, you haven't, but you have seen, physical evidence of healing.
Does coffee count as a plant medicine?
It does, technically.
Technically, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I am not perfectly clean.
Well, could you start by just telling kind of your personal story, like how you were raised, you and Mom? And
it's to most people, it's very strange because, I'm best known for being in a band Twisted Sister in the 80s and the crazy decade of decadence. And that when people think that time, they think wild parties, and they've seen movies like The Dirt, and they imagine that a crazy made up rock star like me would be drugged out and drunk all the time. But as luck would have it, I didn't drink or do any drugs my entire career.
Right.
And it started because I had a bad experience at 14. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll give the shorter version is I got drunk. The first time I ever drank, I just got completely wasted on the ground, vomiting. And that little voice in your head that's sober when your real normal self is not sober, just said, please, God, if you ever let me walk again, I swear off demon alcohol. And I stuck with it. I just realized that, my first opportunity to have a drink, I didn't just have a drink. I drank so much, I was comatose,
right?
Practically comatose. So,
right. That's sort of the culture too, right? To drink until you black out.
Maybe I don't, but I just recognized that as a shortcoming on my part. And I just said, I will not drink or do any drugs. And I never did, even though being a musician through my whole life, most of my friends were getting high. But I just became that guy in the bunch who wasn't high. And it just became, it defined me in many ways as being the one who wasn't high. I also had no problem getting fired up to do a show or to have fun, I remember my friends saying they didn't want to see me high. They were afraid that if I was this amped up, not high, what would happen if I was high? So, but that just stayed with me my entire life.
And when we were kids growing up, that was probably the thing we would be asked the most. It was always assumed that you were a massive druggie and party animal, and people would ask us all the time. From being a young child. And I think it really pushed me and built a personal identity for myself of never wanting to be what people thought we would be, never wanting to be a party animal or a druggie because that's what people expected as you being a rock star and, us being your children. But
exactly. But one thing I'd like to make clear to people, it wasn't that I was anti-drugs or anti-alcohol. It was a personal choice for me. And I really understood why people drank and got high, because we live in a society where you need an excuse to express yourself. If you're acting out, how many times have you heard a line, hey, come on, dance with us. Oh, let me just have a couple more drinks. It's like, it's a line of defense. So if you embarrass yourself, you have an excuse. And as long as society creates that environment where it's okay to be free and be a little crazy if you're high or drunk, but not okay if you're stone cold sober. Because I remember the way I used to dress in the early days, people were freaked out by the fact that I was wearing women's clothing and I wasn't high. Like if I was high, that was an excuse for being bizarre. But to say, oh, no, I'm sober, then they just thought you were weird.
Right.
So I understand why people drink and do drugs and get high.
Right. And it's so interesting because we are so culturally repressed that the only way people can feel uninhibited enough to express themselves publicly or feel a connection with another human, they turn to drugs and alcohol. But that's not, we're definitely, this is recreational drug use, which is more, which is what people think when we talk about mind-altering substances. But this
right,
show,
that's what we're talking about specifically, yeah.
Right, and this show is definitely, we're talking about using psychedelic, especially sacred plant medicines for healing.
That was an education.
Yeah, so your kids, you raised us straight edge, and we start going through our own mental health journey. And
I think we need to include your mom in on this.
Yeah,
because,
please.
Suzette and I'm not telling you guys, of course, I'm telling the audience that we've been together 45 years. And when we met, we were both straight edge. Well, we both had a bad first experience. Let's just say I was with you. Oh, she's gonna say no. You just that's not true. Didn't we ever talk about this before the thing started? Okay. Well, you speak for yourself, Suzette.
Well, my experience is very different than yours. I grew up with a family of alcoholics and drug abusers, and not only was my family doing drugs and drinking, but all my friends that I associated with. And as I got older, I saw where their lives were going. And I said, this is not the direction I want my life to go into. So that is why. And what he's referring to is when I first started dating him, yes, I got drunk, but that had
15 whiskey sours on an empty stomach and a 105-pound 15-year-old girl.
Exaggeration. So yeah, but that wasn't why I
just want to call it but not wanting to be painted like you drank alcohol once, but when it comes to ayahuasca or psychedelic plant medicines, you're willing to share it. I mean, what is the difference in your opinion from the very conventional, socially accepted recreational use of alcohol versus your experience with plant medicines?
All right. I lived my life straight edge, never willing to do any kind of drugs or even pharmaceuticals. And I had started my spiritual journey after my mother died unexpectedly. Then my brother was murdered a short time after, and then my other brother committed suicide. And I, had a complete breakdown. And I was seeing a therapist, and the therapist was pushing me to go on antidepressants. And I fought it like I've fought it my whole life and said, I don't need antidepressants. And I would say, I don't know how long it was, months of being in therapy and going nowhere. One day I was yelling at Cody for something stupid. I don't remember what it was. And he turned around and called me a lunatic.
Sorry about that.
And when he did, it was like a wake-up call for me because I was like, is this what I've become? I'm a lunatic. I've always prided myself on being a great mom. And maybe not perfect, but my children always came first, and that's all that mattered to me. And here, I was losing that. I was losing that game. And I said, I got to get my shit together. So I went back to the therapist, and she put me on antidepressants. And I kind of felt like I lost the battle. Like, I can't believe this is what has become of me. And because I always viewed myself as a tough chick. I'm a tough chick. I can handle this. So a weekend, I said, screw this. A voice in my head said, you don't need antidepressants. You could do this. And I said, shit, yeah, I could do this. And that was it. I went off the antidepressants, and now I was on the road to recovery. And the question was, how do I achieve that? So I said, okay, I'm going to start reading spiritual books. And I started reading a book by George Anderson called Lessons from the Light. And a lot of the problems that I was having is that some of the things that my brothers, both brothers, and my mom, they didn't live really clean life in a Catholic church kind of way. Like, I was raised Catholic. I'm Italian.
Are you talking Uncle Vinny and Uncle Thomas?
Yes. So, my mom was divorced, and that was her going to hell. My brother was involved with, crime. My other brother was a drug dealer. So, I was worried about them going to heaven. And that was a big problem. I was really worried about them. And I started reading this book, and I realized there is no heaven and hell. But anyway, this started me on my journey. And as the years went by, I got more and more spiritual. And I was set that I wanted to go to a retreat center. And all of a sudden, Cody and Shane are going on a retreat center. And I wanted to come. And I said to Cody, I want to come. And Cody says, no, Ma, you can't, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. I did not know that they were psychedelics. Now, Cody will tell you that he warned me.
We absolutely warned her.
And if that word psychedelic came into my head, I wouldn't have done it.
He said to you, do smoke weed or something beforehand.
I know
Don't
that,
just
but
go
I
to the
didn't want
hardest
to
psychedelic.
hear it because I was so conditioned of, those are drugs. To me, acid, pot, all of that is a drug. I saw my friends on all of that, and their life was a mess. They were in and out of mental institutions. They were committing suicide. There was nobody was spiritual. They were just drug addicts. So as far as I was concerned, they were drugs, and I did not want to do that. So I went there with an open heart and an open mind, even though my children tried to warn me, and I had the earmuffs on. And I fell in love with this plant medicine, and I've been on that journey ever since.
Well, let me ask something. Okay.
Okay.
Let's just kind of I feel like we're burying the lead here. Okay. You went and did plant medicines, having never smoked cannabis before, not drinking alcohol, being famously straight edge, right?
Yes.
You went and worked with some of the hardest sacred plant medicines known to man: wachuma, ayahuasca, bobensana, vilca. Mapacho. And
basically I was fucked up.
What did
for 2 weeks.
What did you heal doing that?
I healed a lot of stuff, things that I didn't even know that I had. I carried this pain in my heart and in my stomach. I had an issue with my stomach, and I had seen multiple doctors for it. I couldn't figure out what was going on in my stomach. And when my mom and my brothers died, I couldn't sleep. I was tortured by my own thoughts, and I was taking Ambien. And in the process of taking Ambien, I lost my memory. I couldn't remember things. And it was they didn't warn me. At that time, they didn't know that much about Ambien. And I didn't know that could affect my memory. I was on it for 3 years. That's a long time. But that would be the only safe place I could go where I wouldn't be feeling sad or being possessed by my own thoughts. I would sleep and I would get away from my terrors in my mind. And so I had an issue with sleeping. I had an issue with my stomach. I had a herniated disc in my neck that was giving me migraines. But it wasn't really severe. And, I went there for healing, but it healed so much more than my physical things. I was dealing with loss, like pain in my heart, because I've lost so many of my family members. I would say, I don't know, how many would you say, Dee, 15, 20?
I've been, as I said, been with your mom 45 years, and I can't believe the amount of death and loss in her family and friends. She lost multiple high school friends and best friends, cancer, and just suicides and addictions, murder. It was just unbelievable. And I come from my world, very few deaths that I could have experienced, even within my family. And she suffered so many. It was amazing. So I always marveled at her ability to keep putting one foot in front of the other. When she said that she went into depression after she lost 3 family members in a 8-year period, 10-year period.
It was less. I think it was 5.
I mean, it was amazing that she continued to function. And I remember the psychiatrist saying that was her maternal instincts. They said she was clinically depressed, but because she was a mom first, she got up every day and took care of you guys and decorated for Christmas and birthday parties. And on the outside, she kept business as usual while being in this depressed state. So it was miraculous.
I mean, this is something so interesting because in the Western viewpoint, we sort of take symptom clusters and we make a prognosis. And you're talking about a much deeper pain. There's no diagnosis for a broken heart. Yet we hear all the time about people dying from a broken heart, losing a loved one, and, days or weeks later, another person in the family dies. And also, these other symptoms, like you said, your insomnia was coming from this broken heart. There's no pharmaceutical medication that is going to heal that broken heart that symptomatically was appearing as insomnia or a neck contusion or parasites in your stomach. We don't know. But you have physical evidence, though, of your parasites, right, were gone. We got brain scans of your brain, and your brain waves completely changed. Your blood, the doctor said your blood looked like that of another person.
Yeah.
And I mean, right? And Dad, you saw this evidence, and this is one of the things that helped you, become a believer that this was more than just, recreational substances of abuse.
Yeah, as I'm not a participant, I've certainly support you guys and have seen the value of plant medicines and the miraculous effect it's had on all of you. So that's amazing. You said earlier, like, talk about us raising you guys straight edge, and we really imprinted that on you. Don't drink, it weakens you. And I remember my first child, Jesse, your older brother, who tried to call when he's tried mushrooms. He tried to call me to tell me he had discovered an amazing thing. And I flipped out.
Right.
The audacity that he would call me and tell me I should try mushrooms. You probably guys remember, I was so hostile, so angry. I've apologized to him since, because now I've since learned, seeing how it's helped, you guys with depression and various different things, and what these plants have done, I've come to understand.
Right.
But it was a shock to my system to see them as anything other than what your mother was talking about, as an only purpose to get high.
Yeah, and there's cultural programming, for us. Like, that's as a father, it's your responsibility to respond that way, to keep your son on the straight path. I mean, but do you know why? Like, what made you have that visceral reaction when he told you that?
Because I just saw it as getting high, as I, just like your mother, I just saw it as people getting stoned, getting wasted, getting drugged out, partying. I just viewed it as partying. Even the term, which I still, and at this point now, I sit in a chair with a certain amount of information, and I could speak with a certain, at least intelligently about it. The idea that they still call them magic mushrooms bothers me, because the word magic implies something, magic wand and fairy dust and all that stuff like that. I keep hitting the mic. Sorry, guys. And I think that hurts how important this medicine is.
Right. And a name is a powerful thing. I mean, this is Schedule I substances. We know the government has done studies on them, and we know this has been intentionally criminalized. We understand. I mean, President Nixon, a lot of the war on drugs was done to lock up Vietnam war protesters and people of color to fill the prisons. I mean, that is that is fact now. His aides have come out and said that was the purpose of the war on drugs. It was to squash the Vietnam War protests. So it's like, we are all, victims of cultural programming. I mean, Dad, the truth is like, look, like, when I first worked with any medicine, like, the mind fuck of like, oh my God, like, wait, these are tools. This is not a drug. Like, what, this is an advanced technology. And the truth is all throughout history, soma, so whatever you want to call it, it's always elixir of immortality, blood of the gods, food of the gods. Every culture has a name for this magic or this transcendent substance that people have been using for, religious practice to make for healing and for spiritual purposes. They've just been demonized in the West. I mean, I totally understand why you would respond that way.
Well, it has that. Well, your sister's a really good person to speak of this, because she is the most rambunctious of our children and has gotten away with the most murder and pushed back the hardest.
Yeah,
but she uses.
I want to hear you talk. I don't know why you're hiding back there. This is a conversation.
She uses. I don't say uses. I don't mean like that in a negative way, but she uses plant medicine for medicinal purposes, for health and well-being, but also for pleasure.
Yeah.
There's also, she's a partier, and so there is a party side to marijuana.
Oh,
and things
no,
like that.
not to ayahuasca.
Not to ayahuasca. No.
But you're talking about
different language.
Yeah, and also, what you're talking about people, needing to sedate themselves so they can even dance or let loose or be their authentic selves. People, the subcultures that use these medicines, like let's say the festival scene or whatever, to essentially open up and celebrate life. I mean, ecstasy and community and celebration is the point of life. I mean, it's a sticky thing.
There's conscious partying,
right? Exactly, and there's inebriating yourself into the point of blacking out.
But are you saying that opening up like that in a festive atmosphere is medicinal in its own way?
The reason,
because it's liberating people mentally and psychologically.
The reason we're so close is because we worked with medicines and connected in celebration and danced and sang, and it healed our relationships. It's why our family is so close. And at the end of the day, this all comes back to the family structure. Everything else is just noise. I mean,
but I think a lot of it is intention. I think when you have certain people who are getting high, their intention is to get high.
Right.
When you have other people, the intention to heal, you get whatever you ask for.
Right.
And that's the key to this medicine.
I do feel like anything in life can be a medicine or a poison. It's all about intention, dosage, and quality.
Right.
You can kill
let
yourself.
Shy defend herself
Can you tell your story, please?
I had a really different experience than my brothers. Like, I'm the youngest. I'm 7 years younger than Cody, and we're closest in age. So, I'm sorry for mom and dad if this is your first time hearing this, but it was by the
Probably
time.
Is.
So by the time I was 3, that was when mom's family members started dying, and she went down her spiritual journey. So by the time I'm 12, my brothers are smoking weed and talking to me about ancient aliens, and I just got a very different perspective on it, very young, and but.
Well, Shy, can you tell your story and start from look, this is a story about, we come from a family, Mom, your family has mental health problems that run, and Shy, can you tell us your journey and start from your wound?
Probably 13, I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and anxiety and manic depressive, and I was thrown on meds, and I was on Klonopins, lots of benzos and Adderall from a really young age, and you just kind of get stuck in that loop. And I was just told that I needed it forever to be healthy, and years down the line I went and got back surgery when I was 20 years old, and then I got put on painkillers, and then that was kind of when the pharmaceuticals came to a head. I was just on these painkillers that were making me tired, and then they were giving me things to wake me up and giving me things to fall back asleep, and it was just this drug cocktail that I was just stuck in, and I couldn't get off of it. Mom, you guys Cody and Shane, Mom had already done ayahuasca, and she kind of dragged me kicking and screaming to Costa Rica. I was not having a good time, and forced me to do it. And it was right after surgery. I was in so much pain, and you're not allowed to take painkillers. And I'm just this is torture. And I go to ayahuasca. I remember coming out of my first night, and they do you talk about what happened in the talking circle. And I was this is the first time I haven't been in pain in months. And Mom just started sobbing. And, that was kind of the start of it. And it healed our relationship so much, and it got me off pharmaceuticals. And I just realized that it was the one drug that was fixing this one thing was actually causing 10 more issues that then I needed 10 more drugs to fix. And it was just crazy, and really it sounds corny, but you got to go within and heal the root of the wound, and then the rest of it kind of falls
It's
into
amazing
place.
what a good news thing I've observed ayahuasca is, and plant medicines.
What do you mean by good
Where
news?
you and Shane went down to Peru, and you came back, and you were filled with good news, and you were sharing it with your family, and your mother heard it. And like I said, she never did any hallucinogens or smoked pot or anything, but she said, I have to go. And within 2 months, she was down there.
I was there in 2 weeks. I was booking it before they left.
Whatever it was, she came back. I don't know, that ruins my good news
sorry.
theory. That they passed the good news on to you. You came back and said, I have to get Cheyenne down there. She has to go, kicking and screaming. And she went down there, and Cheyenne's come back, and now she's taking her boyfriend for the first time. It's like your eyes are open to something, and you want to share it with everybody to help other people.
Right. Can I just interrupt for a second back to what Cheyenne was saying? So there's a issue with the way society works. Because Cheyenne and Cody were both having issues in school, the school pressures you to put them on medication. I have always been anti-pharmaceutical. You know how hard I fought to get you on.
You were giving me vitamin regimens.
I had her on vitamins. I tried all kinds of things, but the schools push you to get them on a medication. So they pushed me to put you on a medication, and then we had one problem after another, and same thing with her. So these medications that they're giving to young people, they don't work.
Right.
But it's like, they're putting like a Band-Aid on a wound that is like needs stitches.
It's exactly. And that's the thing is, it's, and here's the thing is, it does work. Anyone that's taken Adderall, it's fucking great. Yeah. It's awesome. It's a great time. But the person that needs an on switch needs an off switch. And the way it's so fascinating that this is how, synthetic drugs work. They work great at first, and the side effects are minimal, but over time, their efficacy, they're less and less efficient, and the side effects get worse and worse, and then they have to keep treating the side effects. I mean, I was on, I got diagnosed with ADHD after several concussions, Wellbutrin, Concerta, Strattera, Focalin, Adderall, you name it, right? So many that would rotate me and keep adding to this drug cocktail. But the most fascinating thing is I mean, it's hard to kind of say. I just feel like they were doing it to get me to fit into sort of this industrial era education system. Like they were getting me to fit into. Yeah, they're
putting you in a box.
Right.
So they put the special kids in a special class, give them extra time. That's what listen, when we got tested, my ADD was worse than yours, right? I never was on a pharmaceutical, and I learned to live with it. But children today, they're put on pharmaceuticals. They don't learn to live with it.
Right, and you develop healthy coping mechanisms with the way you are. And there's that's the thing is it's kind of like a mind fuck though, because you start to believe something's wrong with you, and you start to think you need something to be functioning optimally.
You get conditioned.
And well, the biggest thing I've learned kind of going on this journey and traveling all around the world, working with different medicines is pain is not necessarily a problem. Like these feelings we have, whether it's depression or anxiety or whatever, it's telling us something. Pain is our greatest teacher.
Yes.
And if you sedate and cover it up, you're never going to learn what it's trying to teach you. It's pushing us. It's the spear in the back, pushing us along our path. So when we become stagnant, we stop changing or following our heart, we start to feel this pain. And if we just cover it up, whether it's a shot of whiskey or it's a pharmaceutical medication, we're never going to learn, what needs to change in our lives in order to stop those feelings.
I also think it's like a gift, though. Like the things like my ADHD now, like what they would say was ADHD. When I work, I can do 10 different tasks at once. And I know people that can't do that. Or like my borderline, which like is really just me being a really like sensitive human. And like that's all like these are all gifts that we're now telling kids are like issues. And now you need to fix it. You need to be medicated. And it's like this poisonous like box you're put in from such a young age where you just feel like something's wrong with you that needs to be fixed when really it's like those things make you special.
Right. I think that
that is so true.
I need to interject here because you brought me here for one particular reason, and people need to be reminded of this. And I am not a participant. I have never done ayahuasca, wachuma, any of these things, mushrooms, but I have supported my family in their journey and witnessed the amazing work and how much it has helped, from getting rid of depression, curing your ADD, fixing her stomach, and her doctor, who didn't know she went to do ayahuasca, doing her blood work, said, "This is the blood work of a different woman." Your brother Shane, his depression cured. So I have sat, not in the Maloka, not a part of it in any way other than witnessing firsthand.
And paying for it.
Well, and I'm telling you, people, I'm passing on the good news too, without being a participant. I have not, I am just saying I have witnessed how much it has helped people. And then the stories are just legion of other things. People have been cured of diabetes and cancers, and it sounds impossible, but they're true stories. They really happened, and I've witnessed a lot of them.
Right, and that's the thing is our family alone. I love your good news analogy because that's the point. Like, this is incredibly vulnerable. Like, a lot of us I've been kind of closeted about this, because I don't want people. It's taboo. It's illegal in the States, and I don't want to lose work or people lose respect for me. But at the end of the day, when you know of something that can help so many people and can end the suffering that's going on, or is the closest thing to a panacea I've found, I start to feel, I can't in good conscience be silent. Anything I can do to try to raise awareness of these medicines. And I haven't even done it, but witnessing what you guys have done, I have tried to as well. You know that. And, a lot of veterans have post-traumatic stress, and I've been I know a lot of vets, and spreading the word there, trying to make them aware, and they're already down there being helped. There are many who go down. When I know you all have told me there were Army Rangers and people who had post-traumatic stress down there, doing ayahuasca. But this information needs to be shared even more. So like I said, I haven't even done it, but I've been spreading the good news because I've seen the effects. There's another component to this, and that's because, between our family, we've healed a neck contusion, parasites, concussions, bipolar or borderline personality disorder, anxiety, depression, right? We've healed my lower back. I healed something that is more important than that. What's that? And that was my heart. Yeah. So I carried this hole in my heart from losing so many people, and this fear of losing more people, because why wouldn't I lose more people? They're dropping like flies. And my last ceremony in Peru, the shaman said to me not to drink the last day. And I said, okay, Mother Ayahuasca told me I was done anyway, so I'm not going to drink the last day. So I went up, and Don Howard gave me a cup of ayahuasca. He knew I wasn't drinking. I thanked Mother Aya, and then I went down to go sit in my chair. And next thing I know, I am being pulled off my chair, and I turn around and I look, and my skin suit is sitting on the chair. And I'm like, well, that's weird. This was without drinking any ayahuasca? Without drinking. And I started shooting through the universe and felt this unconditional love, like I can't explain it. I got chills just saying it, because this feeling of love was so intense. I'm going to cry. So intense and overwhelming. I didn't want to come back. I asked them if they'd mail me the skin suit. But anyway, at that point, I realized that anybody you love or you care about, you want them to feel this amazing feeling. And when you die, that's just the beginning. You're not dead. It's just the beginning. Right. And it changed my whole look on death. Right. And now I view death as a gift, and not as a death sentence. Well, now you're getting into something a bit deeper here, and because we can talk about the healing that we've had from these symptoms, but one of the biggest thing these medicines do is they liberate the fear of death. And a wise person once said, the secret to life is to die before you die and discover death isn't real. How much suffering comes from this fear of death, or sort of this persecution of the darker shadow energies? I mean, all of us, if you look at us, we all represent sort of the divine shadow, the sacredness of death. I mean, it's why, your shirt says poison and you got skulls all over you. It's been subjugated and made as this other. It's very much this Christian distortion. But the greatest thing this does is liberate us of the fear of death, to free us to live, and to really just free us from the self-imposed chains we have ourselves in. And also, this brings us to sort of like the more mystical side of this. I mean, Dad, you raised us essentially, there were Christian values, but essentially atheist agnostic, and also have, we were raised with to understand certain distortions around Catholicism, whether it was the Crusades or it was the Council of Nicaea under Constantine, changing, making Jesus the Son of God and changing the days of his death and resurrection to align with pagan holidays, all of that stuff. We were raised. And so when to work with these medicines and have a direct spiritual experience, it changed everything, because it was, oh my God, first was, oh my God, these aren't drugs. Oh my God, this is real, spiritual. Like, there is higher dimensions of consciousness, and we actually can commune with them, and the next thing feeling is anger. It's like, oh my God, there are these power structures in place, these gurus, these churches that want to be the gatekeeper. They say, I am the gatekeeper to this higher truth. And it was just the feeling of, oh my God, this is the thing to dissolve the power structures, to give the power back to the people so they can take truth and narrative and their own health back into their hands. And like, that's why we're so passionate about this. It's that this is the disillusionment of these age-old monolithic religious structures. That's the implications of this. And Shai, we talk about this all the time. I mean, were you have any sort of spirituality before working with psychedelics?
Yeah, I grew up very atheist, so I didn't believe in anything. And then I remember buying a satanic Bible, and Mom and Dad said that I wouldn't get Christmas presents then, because
then there's no Santa Claus.
So I threw out the satanic Bible. I was like, that's not the one.
How old were you when you bought satanic Bible?
14, probably. I was, just going into Hot Topic for the first time with my own $20. Like, I'm buying a satanic
14,
Bible.
just the age of rebellion. He's getting like drunk on wine coolers in someone's
Jesus
basement.
T-shirt in there somewhere.
I had "Fuck God, Believe in Yourself." That was my first takeaway.
I wouldn't care for that one either.
But I like what. Okay,
it's
I know
a great
what
message. I was very young.
Look, we get the message. But it's sacrilegious to people, and it puts people off.
It's okay. I've worn some offensive shit and gotten spit at on the streets by Jesus people, so I get it. But yeah, no, I think I got into like Wiccan shit before ayahuasca, but I'm into like the Kabbalion, and that was all before I started doing ayahuasca. I have a very there's a little bit of truth in every religion kind of vibe.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that this medicine plant ayahuasca experiences brought you guys like back to God not as an individual being, but as a force, and seemed to make you guys more religious, not in the traditional way, but in a
I
more
like
spiritual.
To take blame for this.
Well, you're very, very much you as well.
Yes. I was raised Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, and I got hit by a nun, and then I went completely. I hate Catholics. So
no offense to all the Catholics out there. These are broad generalizations.
This is my fault because I didn't believe in church, and I believed in God, but I didn't believe in church. And we tried going to we did try to go to church for a little while.
I have never been to a church to the point where now when we go to churches in Europe that are like nice to visit, Mom and Dad are like, "Oh no, Shai, you might burst into flames." That's how little I've been to church.
She was born on Halloween. She's the demon child.
I'm okay with that.
No, it's interesting. So, and I saw that the teachings of the churches was of Christ and of all religions. They're all pretty much the same when it comes down to it, were a positive thing. But the actual idea that there was some supreme being that was going to answer your prayers and, and say, yes, I will get you that toy you want.
Right.
I just can't buy into that.
It's disempowering. I mean,
but now you guys are more in the idea that there is a supreme force.
There is.
But energy.
And my angels do bring me toys if I want one.
I mean, I think quantum physics.
Keep the freak flag at half mast if we said we were going to scare away.
I feel like reading about quantum physics was when I was like, there's a thing that's like a god, but it's like kind of being proved by science. And then that kind of became like the idea, the energy of like everything connecting us is what I view more as a religion than anything else.
I mean, it's like you're saying, like it changed our perception, but it's like, how did it make us more religious but less religious? I mean, you start to realize that having a middle person or an institution, being the gatekeeper to this thing, it separates
and rules and structure to it like that. Saying this is the laws of religion, and that goes like totally against.
Well, it takes like
truth,
quote unquote, God out of the individual, and everybody is. Is divine, everyone is a part of that one. I mean, the only truth we really find is that all is one, and one is all, like, period. And there is no, man with a big beard, like answering your Christmas list, when you pray every night. Like, and that's that.
No, instead it's a big snake.
well, yeah, right. I mean, that starts to be, and that's another thing with these mystical experiences. A lot of them are incredibly dark and shadowy, the visions that heal you. I mean, like, and this is sort of the thing. I mean, and we can kind of touch upon this. You guys all said all these different healings and different experiences, and Dad, you're here to validate it. We took science along for the ride. We got tests on ourselves before and after because we wanted to see if this shit was fucking real. We wanted to see if this, and it absolutely is. But the thing we never really talk about, because it's sort of like Fight Club. You don't want to talk about Fight Club because no one's going to get it. It's just a bunch of dudes beating each other up in a basement. I mean, it's like, you don't talk about it. But on this show, I want us to talk about it and the experiences themselves, the things that actually happen when you heal your back or your depression or anxiety are so far out and defy, conventional thinking. I mean, is there any individual story that anyone would like to tell about an experience of healing themselves or, in terms of the actual experience?
Well, you guys have told me about isn't this wrong?
I mean,
aren't we pulling
I don't even know. Are we going to raise it? No, I mean, we can't.
I mean, you've told me about being operated on.
Yeah.
While doing ayahuasca, working on your back, on that. Actually, you saw them operating on you. You've spoken.
You could feel them.
Yeah. So that strikes me because as an uninitiated, I say it's like a surgery suite or something, and there they are, and you're on the table.
All right. Hold up. Let's just pause right there for a second. I really was trying to hold back on sharing the mystical aspects of working with psychedelic medicines, at least for an episode or two, as to kind of ease everybody in and not turn anybody off. As I remember first hearing about people having strange encounters with higher dimensional beings on psychedelics, and my reaction at the time was to just write those people off and think that they lost their minds from doing too many drugs and that their experiences were simply hallucinations. In fact, even when I went down to the Amazon rainforest to work with ayahuasqueros of the Shipibo tribe, I completely dismissed them when they warned us before entering our first ceremony that they would be singing special songs called Icaroses that would call, quote unquote, doctorcitos, aka or meaning little doctors or spirit doctors, into the ceremony to, quote unquote, operate on us. And I remember ignorantly smirking at that remark and just dismissing it as woo-woo animism. And boy, was I in for a very rude awakening. Now, I know this may be a major turnoff for many secular and scientific thinkers out there listening to this show, just as it was for me. But the truth is the truth, and you don't have to believe me. If you have the courage to step into the fire, you are free to work with these medicines in conjunction with ceremonial technologies and judge for yourself. I hope this gives you a little bit of a better understanding of the conversation me and my family are about to have, as we are about to take a radical turn into the more mystical nature of these experiences. The great thing about them, though, is this is no dogma or church or a story we heard or something we read online. This is empirical evidence and direct experience, which I honestly think is the only way for us to really, truly experience life. If our language rubs anyone the wrong way, I apologize, but remember, most discord is a game of semantic confusion. We are all discussing the same thing with a flawed linguistic system, grasping at straws to explain the unexplainable and name the unnameable. Okay. I've said more than enough. Let's rewind a little and go back to the interview.
It's like a surgery suite or something, and there they are, and you're on the table. What is it?
It's bizarre. I mean, it's like it depends where you're at in the experience, and it also depends what part of your psyche is being operated on in terms of how you experience it. I mean, the ultimate thing is essentially your experience is going to be filtered through your psyche. The same way you could show some mountains and have 10 painters, paint it. It's going to be slightly different, but essentially the same thing.
But you all viewed it as being worked on or operated on.
I have a story to answer your question and kind of that. I mean, I think what was craziest when I went to Peru after my second back surgery to heal my back, it felt like I remember laying on my stomach because it was just like physically so uncomfortable, and it really felt like there was like 100-pound person like pushing down on my back, and it was just. While that's happening, I'm just going through like all of this trauma in my head. And it was like all of this like family trauma and shit, like generational trauma with like mom actually. And, I had to like go through all of that. And then when I came out of it, my back was healed. And like the craziest thing to me was, it was like, oh, well then is that injury like the physical representation of like this trauma I've been holding on to in my body.
Right.
And that was like when I started to be like, holy shit, you can go the physical route, which I did. I got a back surgery for the healing and I was still in pain. And then you can go the metaphysical route and you can heal it like energetically and emotionally. And I got so much more from that than I ever did from 2 back surgeries.
Do you think, as a question that they're probably thinking, do you think like you had a physical malady, you had actual, your spine was messed up from a fracture and you hit puberty and it was disconnected. It was
swinging.
You're swinging. Do you think that if you had just gone the route of ayahuasca, that it would have cured the physical?
Yes. If I could go back in time, I would have never gotten a surgery, which is like so crazy. I was like, I never would have gotten it. I would have just went to ayahuasca. And the stories I've heard from people, like, one of our shamans like broke her jaw and healed it, and just these crazy physical injuries that have been healed through ayahuasca.
Do you remember my back injury I had?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
And remember we used to weight train to try to build it up, and then I got mugged. Remember I got mugged in Harlem?
You've had a lot of physical from sports.
My first ceremony, it was a mushroom ceremony, and I walked in with a back brace. I've never worn it again, and that was a stress fracture on my spine. And this is sort of like, we don't talk about Fight Club, but the reason we've moved through this threshold to talk about Fight Club is because of the implications of what this implies. And one of the things when you work with these medicines, it dissolves your ego identity temporarily. And space-time, the first thing you realize is, oh my God, there's no space-time, right? Space-time is the thing that's making everything happen separately. It's the very mechanism that disconnects us and gives us life. When you dissolve space-time, everything becomes one. We talk about like source consciousness as a God, right? As all of us being one, right? When you merge back into that oneness, that's when you start to kind of experience what was creating that disconnect in the first place. So Cheyenne, your injury as an example, and my injury, the weird thing is when you have that cosmic experience of it being healed and you're like, how could that heal a physical injury? It becomes this thing where their ancestral trauma can manifest physically. Same thing with any psychological and psychospiritual trauma or blockages. Your beliefs, your thoughts manifest your reality, and even in physical form. And it really defies kind of conventional logic in Western medicine, but it starts to imply that sort of that if you can heal your thoughts and your beliefs and release trauma, you can heal physical injuries, and you can also heal kind of your family. Like, we're all connected. We're branches on a tree. And, you can heal something and heal somebody in your family directly, simultaneously. It doesn't make sense. And I would love to.
I have a theory about this as well. I have a theory when you do ayahuasca, it opens up all your chakras. Your chakras run every system in your body.
So what do you mean by chakra, Mom?
Your chakras.
Right. So what is that? What does that mean? Energy wheels?
Yeah,
Explain to people.
Well, I'm assuming everyone
Your
watching this
energy
show
centers.
knows what chakras are.
No, hopefully there are people like tuning in who don't know.
I do.
I explain it.
Yeah, Cody, you explain what chakras are.
Okay, so every living organism has a morphogenetic field. That's scientific evidence, right? So when you work with these medicines, you can see this energy field. These energy fields, you seem to have different parts of this morphogenetic field seem to store different parts of like the human experience of psyche, doubt, shame. And in healing these energy centers, you can imbue a flow of vitality into your life that you would experience as more happiness, more presence, no anxiety, no stress, no OCD, so it's an energy center in your morphogenetic field. But yeah.
Right. And so what happens is when you have certain things, say like your throat chakra, and you're not speaking your piece, and you're not being true to who you are, your throat chakra closes up, which could cause all kinds of diseases and illness in your throat. When you do ayahuasca, she opens up all your chakras. So that's like, putting gas in a car. So you're putting gas in a car, now a car could start and drive. So when all your chakras are open, your system starts working again. And I believe that has a lot to do with it. But one of the things that I've experienced, I've done ayahuasca now, 28 to 38 times now. I lost track. But you get certain people that keep going back to the medicine, and they're still as messed up as they were when they began. And it made me wonder, why is that? Why do they keep going back? I only go back because I bring people to the medicine now. Because I'm older, I usually tend to be one of the oldest people in the room.
Sharing the good news.
Yeah.
And people feel comfortable with going with me, so I tend to bring people with me, and I'm there for them for their support. So, but I find that the Mother Ayahuasca gives you the information that you need to move forward in your life, but people don't integrate it. And if you don't heal the stuff she tells you to heal, you're still broken. And no matter how many times you keep going to the medicine, if you don't work on yourself, it doesn't work on you.
Right. I mean, and that's the secret. I mean, that's the thing that makes this not a panacea, because the only way out is through, and nobody can do it for you. People can only heal themselves. So the medicine can show you the way, and then you have to heal yourself. I mean, and Shai, you want to say something?
And yeah, I have a theory about that, because I started doing ayahuasca when I was 20. I got brought for the first time, and everyone else usually there is like 10 years older than me. And I noticed the same thing where people come back, and I think it's that people are really stuck in their ways. And when you go into something like that, you have to be so willing to give up parts of yourself so willingly, just take it, I'm done. And that is like what really gives you the healing. And I think so many people that are older are so stuck in their ways, and it's hard for them to get out of that. And then they end up needing it more. But you have to go in ready to surrender.
That's the problem with people in general. We're conditioned to a certain mentality or a certain thought process, and we get in our way.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with mankind, We're stuck in this play. We're stuck in a play.
Well, it does seem, I mean, that's the thing, is the only constant is change, right? So everything is always changing, right? But we want to identify with sort of our comfort zones or who we are, and view everything as fixed. But we're constantly, and that's when we start to, as we're being ushered along through life, through these cycles of change, but we are identifying with a certain way of being. And that's when we start to feel this discomfort. And I think the thing that these medicines do is they re-imbue fluidity into our consciousness to remove stagnation. I mean, all movement is medicine, period. It can be singing, it can be dancing, it can be running. All movement is medicine. If you have a water running, flowing through a river, no disease can form. If you block that river and the water stagnates, disease forms. It's all about movement. It's all about re-imbuing vitality, whether it's new ideas or new relationships or new experiences. That really is what the medicine is, and that's what psychedelic medicines teach us.
I have an offshoot question. And as an observer, again, I'm concerned with quality control. As an observer, I see that more and more people are talking about plant medicines, ayahuasca, and they say, "Oh yeah, I did ayahuasca at a friend's house over the weekend," and when I hear their story, and I say they're very far from the reality of doing ayahuasca. Like, I understand that what you guys did going to Peru in the purest form, the maloca was wrapped with the vines of the plant that you guys took off the leaves from it, not off the plant. I mean, it's like as fresh as it gets, like an apple you pick out of the orchard. Tastes so much better than one that you get in the grocery store. And that's just the way it is. But then you were taught about the dieta that goes with it and all the strict rituals that have been developed over the years. Yet now, as more and more people are getting exposed, they're doing it casually with literally freeze-dried ayahuasca, and you know, and are they doing the dieta? Are they doing? I've seen that all these steps. Dieta is a special diet that you are supposed to do to cleanse your body. I'm telling the listeners before you do the ayahuasca, so your body is pure, no caffeine, no salt, no sugar, none of those things, no impurities in there.
No sex.
No sex, yeah. Which I was really disappointed that was your second. It wasn't on your list of the thing that was worse. She was like, I can't do this, can't do that, no sex. I was like, whoa. And she goes, I can't have coffee. I'm like, what? Anyway, but I am asking you, because you're spreading the good news, but people are starting to be able to access these things in a very impure way, and then if they don't get the results they want, it's just people going to Peru aren't getting the results. You know, are you concerned about that?
This is the issue with the criminalization of psychedelics, because people aren't, like, the access to the real places to go is probably harder to find or way harder to get to
and
than
expensive.
Getting
expensive
your drug dealer to get you ayahuasca from the dark web. And like, that's the unfortunate, like, because it's illegal, it's so much harder for people to find these resources the right way and do it responsibly and know the right way to even do it. I know so many people that have told me that and didn't even know there was a dieta. Didn't even know there was like shamans around that like did ceremonies.
Right. It's it being illegal is what pushes it into the underground, and how these things, people are not doing it right. It starts to be dangerous. I mean, this also goes into just the genocide of First Nations people and these indigenous wisdoms. I mean, the biggest thing that the intention of this show is to try to bring these medicines to the Western mind and communicate it in a way. We're trying to communicate with Westerners, but at the end of the day, the First Nations people, these are sacred plants. They shepherd, protect these wisdoms and these medicines. And part of this comes to opening ourselves up to decolonizing, opening our minds. This is the fact that the Philosopher's Stone has been right under our nose and we've been ignoring it. The key, how many millions upon millions of people are suffering and have died when these medicines could have helped them and saved them. We have to open up to indigenous wisdoms. We have to protect them, let them really lead the charge. And I'm not even, look, there are people, shamans, that I wanted to go to Peru because I wanted it the right way. I didn't want a Western shaman to lead the circle, right? Like, they're some of the most amazing shamans I know are Westerners. So I don't want to like demonize them. I'm just saying.
Your main shaman down in Peru, Don Howard, was Western.
He was American.
He was American.
Yeah, he was a translator.
And
though.
respected
Don
down there.
Yeah,
he was very respected. So
right. I mean, the way is what Shai said, not to criminalize it, and also to open up and listen to the indigenous people on who have been working with these medicines for thousands of years, and listen to them, learn from them. You know, humble ourselves to their teachings. That and that is going to be the way we can work with these plants.
Teachings, people, I'm observing here, there are no shortcuts. If you're going to go down this path, do it correctly.
Yeah.
So my brother, who was murdered, he was dealing with severe depression. He tried to commit suicide 3 times because he was dealing with severe depression. He actually wanted to go and get shock therapy. Remember that day?
Yep.
And if I knew about ayahuasca then, I would have dragged him down to Peru like I did my daughter. And this is it. There's so many people dealing with severe depression that are trying to commit suicide. And this is hope. This is, you could help people that you love. And one thing I got to say is doing ayahuasca is not fun.
No.
It's not like I'm going to go get high for the weekend.
No.
That is the last thing it is. It's not getting high.
Well, you guys always use the term do the work.
Yeah, you got to be a warrior, and it's not easy. And so, people who are listening to this who know nothing about it, it's not like a cool high. Let me go get high for the weekend. It's not like that.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, mixed with the most beautiful thing.
It's the most rewarding thing. It's rewarding. As much as you put in is as much as you get back. And the ceremonies where I was like early on, like not ready to do the work and do what I had to do, I'd be not have the effects of it. Like you don't have as much when you go into there like with the right mentality, you get so much back.
Right. But you did go back.
I mean, I've been back like 20 times.
Well,
more than that.
We've sat with people who, for weeks on end, who drink multiple cups a night and have no experience. I mean, you just told a story of drinking, not drinking, and astral projecting from your body, Mom.
Yes, I wonder about that. I wonder if it has something to do with the dieta.
The medicine is so intelligent and it meets you where you are. If you need to learn patience, you're going to learn patience. If you have preconceived notions and judgment, it meets you where you are, and there's a lot of work that you can only go as deep as you're ready to go.
Yeah.
It's plant medicines, plural, right? And no, I'm just saying that your brother Shane was cured of his depression from mushrooms, right? It wasn't, even though he did go do ayahuasca,
right?
But really mushrooms helped him. So how's that play?
I mean, it's really interesting because you have a bunch of different entheogenic plant medicines, and psilocybin mushroom is probably the medicine I work with the most as well. Me and my fiance Tanya hold space for mushroom ceremonies, and it's a different medicine. It doesn't have it's not dimethyltryptamine like ayahuasca, but I mean it's equally as powerful. It's the interesting thing is, since working with ayahuasca, the mushroom ceremonies are straight up ayahuasca.
Same.
They're the same exact thing.
That's the same thing that happens. It's sometimes like the littlest, I'll microdose mushrooms and I'll have like an ayahuasca
I don't
experience.
even have to do a mushroom, and I can just walk in a room and get an ayahuasca flash.
That's the interesting thing is we're talking about you're using more of your brain, right? It's unlocking the human potential. You're unlocking dormant evolutionary mechanisms within a human being, so you work with these medicines and it slowly, gradually peels back the layers and will hack you into your intuition, hack you into, just greater abilities that I never thought were even real, but then that starts to bring up this whole, once you start to see, you're opening up your intuition, you're opening up empathy, healing capabilities. Next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, I mean, the witches, the druids, the pages, this, the sages, the oracles, like the persecuted people in the shadows who've been working with these medicines and doing healing modalities outside of the religious structures. Like, this is a very real thing. And this is actually thousands of years of persecution. This is pushed into the underground in the shadows for a reason. I mean, we're waking up to gender inequality, racial inequality, sexual inequality. This is another inequality that is not spoken of, which is people outside of the major religious structures taking their spirituality and their health into their own hands. I mean, like, this is a movement. This is a movement that and people have been genocided for thousands of years for working with these modalities in the shadows.
As the viewer out there, how do you know what you need to do? We know that marijuana could be helpful for people with, chemotherapy or whatever, or mushrooms. But how do you know what you should do for your problems?
I think everyone's unique to their own medicine. Like I had probably my biggest healing from Wachuma, which was like I did with ayahuasca a couple days into it, but I think you can, try everything once, kind of. Give it a go.
But do you start, I'm being facetious here. Do you start smoking marijuana, like think that helps, or you start with mushrooms? You guys, as you said to your mother,
I don't smoke pot.
She hadn't done anything before she went. And
I like
did that.
Mom's mentality. You just go straight for the hard.
Go straight for the kill. I mean, you guys were begging her to just try a little something before you go down there.
Smoke pot.
I mean, cannabis is so different from like the master healer plants. I mean, a lot. You're talking about dieta and a formal dieta, no smoking cannabis. I mean, some shamans will have you stop working with cannabis or Santa Maria for 3 months, 6 months beforehand. Some of them.
Okay.
Where do you start? You either go somewhere where it's legal. I don't think I can, and find a good shaman. Eventually, this is being legalized and decriminalized, and there will start to be, John Hopkins and UCLA. They'll do tests on psychedelics, and you can sign up for this if you want. I mean, I suggest, cannabis is. Sure, it has that effect of opening you up a bit, but people smoke cannabis and get anxiety and paranoia, and they go, oh, I never want to work. I never want to do mushrooms. They think it's the same thing. It's totally different. I mean, like, this is full-blown red pill when you're talking about something like mushrooms or ayahuasca or working with, like, DMT or wachuma.
I think it's what you're looking for, because there's, like, Kambo, which is, like, non-psychoactive, a 15-minute experience, and will, like, cleanse out your body. So maybe, like, for someone like you who doesn't like mind-altering substances, that's what you go to. Ayahuasca is amazing because you have, like, this shaman and these people. It's a very, like, I don't know, communal, like experience. Like, the whole experience is really beautiful, and you're getting kind of, like, guided through it by people. And maybe people that are less comfortable with psychedelics want to go towards that. But, like, I think weed and shrooms are kind of completely different to me than.
I would start with microdosing psilocybin mushrooms.
Always.
I mean, it's
always.
It's
highly recommended.
You're not gonna have a breakthrough experience if you want to. If you want to have a breakthrough, then
but then the question goes, where do you get the mushrooms from?
Well, I mean, look, this is illegal.
Friendly neighborhood drug dealer.
I mean,
that's the quality control
grow
thing
it. They come from the earth. You grow it. I mean, like, you grow your own. I mean, that's, or you leave the country and do it someplace where it's legal. Find a medicine man who you trust, or a doctor.
How do you find those people? You guys, Joe Rogan's getting beat up a lot lately, but it was Joe Rogan who introduced you guys to the White Wizard Don Howard on his show, if I remember.
Actually, Aubrey Marcus. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, not you, Joe. But Aubrey Marcus, I thought it was Joe.
It was on his podcast.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. But that's led you to an authentic, true, and the late Don Howard, by the way. But it's still going on down there. As a matter of fact, you went down there to Spirit Quest post after his death, right?
Yes,
yeah.
and his
so
daughter
it's still
was my
going
shaman.
down because it's really he was just a guide, really, right?
Well,
Don
he did the
Howard?
wachuma ceremony.
No,
but there
his
was
daughter
the
does.
locals though, who were the true shaman down there.
The Peruvian.
I got invited to sit with Amber, who's a Western shaman who we've all sat with, and I went, no, I want to do it where the medicine's from, because I had been reading about it for 3 years, right, but not having the courage to do it.
Amber invited you before you went down to Peru?
She came to me first, and I was like, no, I'm going to do it the right way, where the medicine's from, with the tribes. And it was very difficult, and I didn't touch the medicine for a year after. I was so intimidated. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done.
You found it to be terrifying.
Oh, it was horrifying.
It was the scariest. There was rough.
I have a good story about that.
Now, wait a minute. When you went down there the last time, that was the first time to Peru?
That was but I had done it before Peru. But
in Costa Rica.
The way everyone holds the ceremony, like, specific to their own, like, tradition, and the Peruvian style is rough.
Yes,
very intense.
It is.
I wasn't there, people. I just have heard the stories.
It's rough.
It is rough.
Hearing the Amber, stories to all Amir, to Costa Rica, to Peru. Peru had a darkness to it.
And they originated it.
Yeah, and it was very intense. It wasn't a fun. There was no.
There's
fun,
no fun
dancing.
in it. They sit you in a dark room, and they're like, "You work through your shit,"
and then you're like,
"No." no.
Yeah, and that's
the Maloka vibrates. Literally, it's like being in the middle of a beating heart.
Well, I do feel like going, like, because I went to Amber. You took me to Amber.
That's a good story.
A year later, and
was it Amber or Costa Rica? Was it
in Costa Rica?
No, well, I went to Costa
Rica.
I went to Costa Rica twice.
Right.
Once with him, then once with
She
her.
is a good news spreader. She and the best way. She had such a good experience.
I am an ayahuasca pusher.
No, Suzette, my wife, their mom. Cody had a terrifying experience. Cheyenne had a dark experience. Everybody, Shane was down there, and his wasn't as terrifying as you, but it was dark. It was intense. But she had a beautiful experience from day one, and she has kept promoting and being a voice for ayahuasca, and a great voice because she's not a person who had done any psychedelics, any kind of hallucinogen at all prior to going down there. So she got the message, I guess, and she's spreading the word.
Right. And I mean, all I'm trying to say about the working with the shamans who are not from Peru, I feel like it gets like a bad rap. And some of my favorite shamans and favorite ceremonies are with Westerners.
Agree.
And I feel that they just understood more how to talk to me and to communicate with me what's going on. So I
can get that.
And it felt a little safer. Like the tribes, they'll kind of like kick you in the fire and just let you sit there and writhe in agony for days on end.
A little less Don Howard.
yes, exactly. So,
in the mornings, they just pour ice cold water on you, and you're like, ah, and they just laugh.
They call
laugh
it
at
a
your
flower
misery,
bath.
but it's not. It smells like swamp water.
It's horrible.
They're just waterboarding you. It's terrible.
I always wonder if they're in their own language going, these white people will do anything.
And pay for it.
It's the funny thing is we haven't even gotten into the depths of the mystical nature of the experience, but we have covered a lot, and I'm sure we're going to do this again. I mean, I think a good place to kind of go here is like, Dad, you see our experiences, you hear these stories, like being an outsider and someone that's not open to it. Like what scares you about it? What intrigues you about it? Seeing the benefits, but not really having that be kind of, your deal.
Okay. Get ready to laugh. It strikes me that you guys are all looking for the truth. It strikes me you want the truth. You want, and we always refer to the matrix. You want to know. You don't want to be in the matrix. You believe that the world is a matrix, and you want to know the truth. I'm in the Matrix, and my Matrix is really, really cool. I mean, I've been with her for 45 years. I'm a rock star. I got money. I've got houses on the beach, and I don't want to be unplugged. I feel no compunction to know the truth. If this isn't the truth, I don't want to be on that greasy, dirty ship eating that slop, because I've seen what I said what Keanu Reeves was dealing with. So I feel no interest in finding out the truth. I'm having a great time. I remember when we were down and we were down in New Orleans and you saw the priestess, and you guys are trying to get me to go talk to the priestess, and I said, no, I'm great. I don't need it. And the priestess grabbed you in the middle of your reading. She said, don't worry about your dad. He's doing fine. You remember?
Yes,
True or false?
Yes.
We are doing the investigative journalism for you and reporting back.
So I mean, I admire you guys' journey and quest and what you're trying to discover, and I'm just very content with having you as my world, and I don't want to be unplugged.
And we're content with it too. We love you, and you provided the space. You raised us. You raised us with an open mind and have supported us to venture out and to experiment with things and to go on that journey of truth. My question for you is, a wise person once said, being a well-adjusted individual in a sick society is not an accomplishment. So the idea is, with so much suffering in the world, I mean, you have genocide. We're destroying the earth. We have more slaves today than ever before. We have, our food is poison, our water is poison, our airs are poison. We have corruption up and down, whether it's the private sector or the government. We have sick people. So the question is when it comes down to, yes, like, you don't have to live in the matrix, and you do good all the time. You do more good for people than all of us do combined with your charitable endeavors. My question is, when we're talking about like a greater truth or a medicine or something that could liberate us from suffering, like how does that factor into your equation? Are you sort of like, hey, well, like I'm at the end of my life, like I've done my thing, and look, you've helped change and heal the world. You are a voice, a revolutionary voice against censorship.
Right.
We stand on your shoulders. I just want to know, like,
very
what?
nice you said,
No, of course, Dad.
But you know, but I feel like I am spreading the good news. I mean, I've done podcasts. I've talked about it. I'm here. I've you know, on social media, I'm very open about my support and my belief. And if something would occur in my life, like depression, like cancer, diabetes, a lot of these different things that I've seen, I would try plant medicine before I went to you know, traditional pharmaceuticals. I would absolutely. So right now I'm in a good place. And interestingly, you guys are slowly, you know, eroding me. I mean, I besides the acceptance, I have microdosed with my wife. My wife's been nice. And I'm not, you know, I mean, I have tried, I was having some sleeping issues and I have tried cannabis, CBD.
How'd it work?
It left me feeling too lethargic the next day. I slept, but then I felt I wasn't finding the right, maybe it's just a dosage issue. But so I'm open, I'm more and more open-minded to these things. And, you know, I'm not, and like I said, if in face of some of the things that you guys have been dealing with, ADD, back issues, stomach issues, heart issues, I mean, depression, all these things. I've been blessed that I haven't dealt with these things, or if I have, I've dealt with them in a different way. You know, I'm meditating now. And you guys have, I'm only for 10 minutes, folks, but I feel like I'm going full, I won't say what full, whole hog. And, you know, and I'm headed down that path. And if you said that to me, I have this running joke. If you told me 20 years ago that I would do these things, I would have punched you in the face. You know,
me too.
You know, so I, you know, I am, it's not a resistance thing. It's because I've been having a problem with stress. And finally I said, you know what? Maybe meditation will help, you know? So because I've heard so many things about it. So I will turn to these things as necessary, but I am spreading the word, and that, by doing that, I feel like I'm doing my part to help make the society by spreading the good news.
You're the best father, and we love you so much. One of the things is like, I kind of went down this road thinking like kind of like a biohacker. Like, yeah, I wanted to heal myself, but I wanted like human optimization, and a lot of it came around work. You know, guys know I'm a workaholic, and I'm still working on that, ironically.
Working on being a workaholic.
But the message from day one, the first message, the second message, every ceremony I do is you all. It's the family, it's us. And it's honestly, it's all that I'm ever, it's everything in terms of the messages. So like all my interest now is, yes, I would love to raise awareness around this and to destigmatize these modalities and start to, you know, raise the consciousness of humanity whatever way I can. But at the same time, like, it's just us. Like, I love you all so much, and I just want us healthy and together, and we are together. We were more fractured years ago, and we're closer than we've ever been.
Oh, for sure.
Well, one thing I got to say is that, we've gone to ceremony together. I've gone to ceremony with all my children.
And that's beautiful. How many people that opened up to the idea when they see your mom and your sister and you all there together.
That's the genesis of this entire show. Is just walking to ceremony.
So, and how many people have issues with their parents? So, if you can heal and go to a ceremony with your mother or your father and heal that trauma, that is like, say, a weekend of ayahuasca heals 10 years of therapy.
We were not friends the first time she took me to ayahuasca.
She yelled at me for 3 hours on the way home.
But it also healed our relationship.
It healed her, not me.
Shy. We became best friends from doing medicine together.
Yes.
I mean, we were siblings, but we were not like,
Yeah, but that's a weird time vortex.
That 3 hours we were yelling at you was in a way, of
yes,
vomiting.
It was. She vomited all over me.
Her feelings.
Okay, that's not exactly what happened. Mom also yells. I just want to.
I didn't yell at you.
Who uses a louder tone of voice?
I know what I actually feel that I'm in a certain way better for the message being a non-participant and an outsider who speaks like, hey, look, man, I haven't done it. I haven't been there, but I've seen what it does. And people look at me because they know I'm clean and sober and I don't do these things. And I don't know if it has more gravitas, but so I feel there's a certain benefit to me. I even with spirituality. I know, like I did a celebrity ghost stories thing. And when I'm saying, look, I was like, I'm not a ghost guy. I don't believe in ghosts and this kind of thing, but and if you want to go see that online, you can. And I believe in ghosts because I've seen the evidence of it, but I was not that guy, and I think that sometimes opens other people up who are more cynical about these things.
I agree. I think it's why you're a bridge, because you're coming from it. Because for me, when I would hear people, when I was researching before ever working with it, my first thing I thought was, oh, they've all lost their minds. Like, you start talking about like interfacing with.
Me too.
Yeah. I just go, oh, they've all lost their minds. It didn't matter. Even if they were a doctor, I didn't care. So seeing somebody who, with 2 feet on the ground say, no, I've seen physical evidence and I support it when I am against it, I think you're a perfect conduit. The big thing is just as you guys get older in your age, I mean, like we all know, best case scenario, we are all together and you transition out of this life in a bed with us all around you, I'm
sure you'll dose the shit out of me.
Well, I just want whatever. Look, you're so open-minded, whether it's meditating or any of this stuff.
I'm sure
look, he's surrendering. I love it. He's just waving the white flags.
We beat him down.
Would you sit and talk with Dr. Abi and just to talk about anything you're dealing with, and he can give you sort of a formal medical, talk about how psychedelics would potentially help with it?
Sure.
You don't have to do it, yeah? Okay, cool. We should make that happen.
Yeah. One thing I got to say, there's also a stereotype of what people think that you should look like if you're doing plant medicine.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at us. I think we go against, not we, but you go against the norms just looking at you guys.
No, for sure. When I went
I think that's great to break the stereotype.
When I went to Peru, I was like separate on the plane from everyone else going there, and I'm wearing like a typo negative shirt, like a very gothed out outfit. And I walk up to them after the flight. I'm like, so you guys are going to Spirit Quest? And they all like shuddered and were like, ugh. And then every single person individually came up to me that week and apologized for judging me. And I was like, yeah, fuck you guys.
It's true.
They
And the
all
same
were
goes for your
newbies.
mom. She flew down there. She was wearing was a tangerine jumpsuit with heels, and she was going to the jungle. And people
Cody
with her
didn't warn me
leopard
about that.
rollerboard, and she's bringing it through the jungle. And she's like, "Where are you going with that?" She gets on a plane with a whole bunch of hippies and flowing robes and what have you, with their rucksacks and
I did not
like
get
we're
the
going to
khaki
ayahuasca.
memo.
And what's that woman doing here? But that breaks the stereotype, and that's important. That people don't think, oh, this is just a hippie thing. This is just a young people thing. You were the oldest person or one of the older people there, even though not everybody, people there are older, some of the people, right? You've told me.
My question, because we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, is there anything individually, and I think let's start with Shai and we'll go around. Is there anything, if there was one thing you would like people to know when it comes to these modalities or just life in general and what it's taught you, if there's one thing, if you're bleeding out in the gutter and you have one thing to say before you die, what do you want to say?
Question everything. You're not sick. You're just a human being, and you just need to go through your shit and like look into alternative routes, and don't just go with what the mainstream is telling you the way of healing is.
One thing, it's probably my age, but one thing I worry about is that when we're promoting plant medicine, I don't want people to think that this is an invitation to go out and do plant medicine unsupervised or by themselves or in the jungle by themselves. Everything is precaution, and, less is more. And, have a shaman.
Everybody's saying there's no atheists in a foxhole.
Yep.
Even atheists, when they're in war and they're in the foxhole and they're being shelled and shot at, even atheists will pray to God for salvation. Don't turn your back on a possible miraculous cure that this can be. If you're trying everything else and you're at your wit's end, I think you should go to this first, actually, before you go to pharmaceuticals or whatever. But don't turn your back on this as a possibility of helping you with mental issues and physical issues and all kinds of issues that you have. Be open to it.
Word. All right, I love you guys so much. Seriously,
You
have no idea. This is like a dream come true to actually do this, and it's also like super healing for me.
It's cool. We've been talking about this actually for a bit.
Yeah,
it's great.
And you're all like warriors, and I just respect you all so much. But I think that's our time, and yeah, I love you all. That's our show. Thank you for listening to the first episode of the Awaken Underground podcast. We appreciate your time, attention, and support. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow us on your social media platforms. Tune in next Tuesday as we do a deep dive into the science of psychedelic medicines and what they have to teach us about the nature of human consciousness. Thank you for joining us. We love you all. See you next week. The Awaken Underground is a production of Cavalry Audio in association with iHeartRadio. The Awaken Underground is created and hosted by Cody Blue, directed by Tanya Dahl, produced by Cody Blue and Jeff Apple, executive produced by Dana Berdetti and Keegan Rosenberger, co-executive produced by Jason Seagraves and Brandon Morgan, with post-production supervision, editing, and sound mixing by Josh Windish. And a very special thanks to Danielle De Loreto, our teachers, First Nations people, our ancestors, our families, and these sacred plants.